This article was actually really interesting. It was talking about Instagram, TikTok, and just kind of like the overall trend of the social media space and where things have been and where they're heading now that Instagram and Facebook have doubled down on becoming a little bit more TikTok in the way that they serve up their algorithm. The author starts off this piece talking about how Twitter is more of a people curated network. You actually have to go through and manually follow people and unfollow people, as opposed to an algorithm directly delivering to you people who you want to see. And then it kind of just talked about the evolution of Facebook, specifically when it comes to the news feed and the feed that Facebook launched, which actually received a whole lot of hate when it first went live. A lot of people really didn't like the concept of seeing content on the internet that wasn't directly from their friends. But then this sentence really kind of, I think, nailed the point that the company correctly intuited a significant gap between its user's stated preference, no newsfeed, and their revealed preference, which is what they like the newsfeed quite a bit. I found something similar with my own SaaS business, actually, where it wasn't nowhere near on the scale of this, but with stenography, I was initially had launched it. When I initially launched stenography, it was actually manual in the sense that you had to highlight blocks of code and then send those blocks of code off to the server, where the server would do some work, and then it would call the AI, and then the AI would parse and understand the code and then send that back to the users. And users would tell me that they really liked this workflow, but the data, rather, their revealed preferences was telling a completely different story. The revealed preference was saying that nobody was really using it. I could see the amount of invocations, which is like the amount of times that the server has been pinged, because it uses a token model per month, and people just weren't using it. So I knew that I needed to create a feature that would allow it to happen automatically. So I actually had to go in and create a whole other layer on top of the API that's sole goal was to parse code before it actually even reached the end user. So this would automatically be firing in the background, giving the AI this kind of autonomy to be able to choose greedily the biggest blocks of code to explain on any particular code file and then go ahead and explain them. And I think it's interesting because you can see that social media companies and just companies in general do similar work where their goal is to algorithmically choose content that matches users' revealed preferences as opposed to the user's stated preferences. And, you know, in a world where the Kardashians, this actually is really also poignant. It's talking about the coming fall of the Kardashians. If you don't know the context around this, the Kardashians recently have been posting on Instagram to their story saying, make Instagram again. If we wanted TikTok, we could just have the genuine thing on TikTok. And Sam Lesson here actually makes a really good point, I think, about what the context of it means in the greater entertainment space, specifically as it refers to the kind of chart of how people get in content. So, you know, pre-content, there was the People magazine where everybody just saw things on People magazine and they were like, did you hear what this celebrity did XYZ? Then people found it more interesting to just know what their friends were doing, see who the new people, if Stacy and Ethan became Facebook official, you know, that's actually more interesting than seeing what the red carpet is doing. And then we got reality TV shows like the Kardashians, which are professional friends, that really started to kind of kill off the idea of your real friends because they were just constantly interesting. Then it took a step further with things like TikTok and YouTube recommendations and Netflix recommendations, where now algorithms are better than the Kardashians because now you can get most interesting content from anybody at any time. because the Kardashians still have to show up to work. And then finally we get to the AI generated content, the dollies of the world, where in the future there's a very high chance that people will be just leveraging artificial intelligence, seeding it with different content ideas, and then sending those off to a content farm. AI generation is going to be very big in the content space in the next couple of years. So that's something that, is going to have to be kept an eye on, specifically when it comes to generating of not even just misinformation, not disinformation, not something that's necessarily particularly hostile or particularly helpful. I'm actually more worried about the noise on the internet that doesn't really, again, move conversation forward, I guess is a way to put it. And we're probably going to get a lot of that type of AI content. We're going to get a lot of AI content that isn't necessarily boundary pushing in terms of writing. And we're not going to get a lot of AI content that's boundary pushing in terms of art as well. The author actually ends this piece with a pretty provocative point that Meta, if it survives the kind of TikTok challenge, will be on its way to a moat enjoyed by the likes of Apple, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, which all have real world aspects to their differentiation. And I think that that's kind of interesting because basically the author's point is that by having a ton of data and a ton of GPUs and a strong foot into the VR space, if these mediums do progress like the gaming scene, I think a lot of this author's argument is built off of the concept that social media will evolve the same way that the gaming scene evolved. It says, gaming was the first to make this progression into the 3D era. I think that yes and no, right? It makes sense for video games to be 3D because of the aspects of what video games are, right? Like video games are a thing where you are stepping into a fantastical world, fantasy. You're stepping into something that doesn't exist in the real world and has characters that aren't supposed to be real. So I think that it made sense for video games to move from 3D to VR. For actual real life, I think video is actually quite representative of people's day-to-day experience and allows us to capture better sides of ourselves. I mean, this lighting and this camera is very flattering. You know what I mean? There's the flattering look of what we've built with this technology so far. And also, I'd like to add, is still relatively cost prohibitive. So I think that gaming industry has been able to eat a lot of this cost. I mean, even how much did Cyberpunk cost? Cyberpunk total cost of development. So if it costs $316 million for Cyberpunk 2077 to be made, I just don't see consumers being able to bridge that gap. The way that the social media environment currently is that it's very much held up by large audiences and advertising money. So if either of those fall out or bottom out, then it's going to be hard to really see how computing moves forward through social networking. But I guess we'll see. Right. This will be on the internet forever, right? For what it's worth, I think that the amount of compute and resources made to retain and require these also goes up. The environmental stuff gets more and more real for the world, and it's showing that it will, given our best, data about what's going on with climate change. There might be a world where we don't have access to internet 24/7 at mega gigabits bandwidth. I think we are going to prioritize it very heavily. I think as a society, internet will probably be one of the last things to fall because its lack of presence is immediately noted. I mean, people usually get over it, I think, within a week, but the communication network, again, as a species that pretty much thrives off of communicating, really requires us to have a strong net to be able to communicate under. So the internet probably has a great chance of surviving that, whatever that world looks like. So anyway, yeah, so VR and 3D just take so much data to work with, so they can't really be put onto a small text fits in kilobytes. Like, you can have thousands upon thousands of notes inside of a single text file, and those kilobytes can be very, very sticky. They can exist through many lifetimes. So I think that it's convenient for information and advertisers for things to be higher next to like the video section, but in the VR section for gaming. But realistically, text will always be around on the internet and will always kind of be the dominant mode.